I'm fascinated with how the whole spectrum of intentional communities, including cohousing, which is one of about 11 different kinds, including how cohousing thrives, succeeds, has harmony, goodwill, connection, community glue. It's that feeling of how lucky we are to live here. And I'm interested in the things that tend to reduce that level of pleasure in community, and the kinds of conflicts or pains or schisms or demoralizing experiences or people who don't want to go to meetings anymore sometimes. I'm interested in that phenomenon. And I'm interested in how communities can learn what seems to work well in other communities and what seems to not work well. And what if communities around the country and in Europe, where I go now too, what have they learned that works well? How have they resolved things that have challenged them? And how have they applied their group intelligence together to get group wisdom? Sometimes this is called co-intelligence, to solve the problem. So I'm a little bit like Johnny Appleseed. I go around and learn what works in various communities, and then I go to the next community and give them the seeds, as it were. I've written 2 books. One's called Creating a Life Together, Practical Tools to Grow Eco-Villages and Intentional Communities. And another one called Finding Community, How to Join an Eco-Village or Intentional Community. My special interest is in governance and decision-making, and how they're not the same, even though a lot of people think so. And what are communities doing with governance and decision-making to make life better? Or to use NVC tech language, to make life more wonderful, since life is already pretty good in community. But before I say any more about that, I want to introduce my friend Gaia. This is Gaia Erlandson. And Gaia lives in the same general area that I do, which is near Asheville, North Carolina. She's the founder of a relatively small-sized community called Lotus Lodge. Gaia is the owner of the triplex, and she has renters. And she has community experience using one of the newer forms of governance and decision-making that is available to communities. And she's a community activist and advocate. She's a writer and an editor, a clinical psychologist, and has a lot of background in what works well in group dynamics. And so we're just on this trip together for fun, and she is a resource person for us. So I'd like you to know who Gaia is. I'll be asking her to add comments throughout the evening, and she will add comments throughout the evening. So, lots of what I know about what doesn't work comes from where I live, the community I live in. And I have watched it struggle through painful difficulties and slowly, are you laughing?
Yes.
And slowly figure out some better ways, with various of us gently in the background attempting to induce people to consider some things they might not have considered before, and to get a little bit more aware, to get a little bit more aware of sometimes how typical group dynamics and group patterns happen in intentional communities, cohousing and every other kind. By the way, I don't live in cohousing. I live in a rural eco-village, and one of its neighborhoods is a cohousing neighborhood. I'm very familiar with cohousing because I often serve as a consultant to cohousing groups and trainer of various things. I've gone to lots of the conferences and learned a lot, and I know a lot of people in a lot of cohousing communities and visited many of them. P.S. This is the most beautiful common house I've ever seen. Oh, oh my God! Oh my God!
Architects.
Ta-da!
Part of it.
No, not. It was Mary. Austin and Mary.
Oh, Mary. I thought you were part of the Mary crowd.
I'm pointing in the wrong direction. Yes. Ta-da!
Oh, she's pointing. That's right.
Yeah.
You
Thank you.
You're from Canada.
But thank you.
Okay. So I'd like to, if I may, share with you sort of a basic foundational thing that I figured out recently and ask you, gee, does this seem like the same thing to you too? However, maybe I shouldn't leap there. Maybe I should hear each person's name around the circle so that That would be a good thing, don't you think? May we start with you?
Sure.
We know each other.
Quick.
You look familiar to me.
I'm Randa.
Randa, thank you.
Vicky.
Jody.
Jamie.
Nancy.
Mark.
Jenny.
Gina.
Jana.
I'm Bob.
Mike. Scott.
Rip. Jochen.
What did you say?
Jochen. I have a common face but not a common name.
Could you say your name more slowly?
Jochen.
Jochen.
No, just Jochen.
Like
Jochen.
Johan.
Jochen.
J-O-C-H.
Yeah.
Are you from the Netherlands?
No, Germany.
Germany. Ah,
Yeah.
that is good. Yeah.
Barb.
Rob.
Me.
You,
Amy.
yes, you.
I don't know if there's somebody behind me.
No,
Amy.
Amy.
Lori. I'm Renee.
Peter.
Janice.
Mary.
Tor.
Diane. Gracie. Carolyn.
Laura.
Audrey.
Paula.
Henry.
Gaia.
John.
John.
Jerry.
And
Felicia.
Felicia, hi. I won't remember your names, but it's nice to hear them and to hear everybody's voice because I think there is an energy-filled building when you do going around like that. I don't know, have you ever noticed that? Seems to make the group feel good. And now I feel like even better than before. So now I want to show you my idea here. I think there's three things that helps a newly forming community succeed and thrive, which seem to be the same three things that helps an existing community succeed and thrive. And sometimes groups don't know they need it because they're focused on one thing or another, if you know what I mean. So over here is creating community glue. Like your fabulous community building and your shared meals. And community glue is just one of those names for that sense of us, that sense of we, that sort of shared identity and that kind of happy, proud, delighted feeling that we get to live here. So there's things that help create community glue like shared meals, games, skits, plays, stuff you do where you end up laughing together, playing music, dancing, drumming, singing and dancing, work parties, meetings where you're sharing from the heart important things like storytelling evenings. You probably do these many things, cross-country skiing and sledding and skating on that pond, all kinds of fun stuff you probably already do. A lot of people think that's the whole of community, and I would say it's very important, and it's one part. Does anybody resonate with that this is important? May I see a show of hands for thank you. And do you do this kind of thing here? Oh yeah.
Not enough though.
Thank you. This here is good communication skills. And this is a strange thing, but I'm sure you know this. Those of you who've lived in community in cohousing longer know it really well, I'm sure. That we have to talk to each other with a higher level of skill, patience, and awareness, consciousness and kindness and open-heartedness than we do in mainstream culture. That is to say, outside of community. Has anybody noticed that it seems to work better if we learn to do better than we would if we were just talking to anybody in our job somewhere or something? Yeah. Has anyone discovered that?
yes.
Yes. Have you discovered the magnifying mirror effect? Here's a magnifying mirror in which your eyeball suddenly becomes a very big eyeball. My faults, your faults, my issues, your issues. Have you noticed that? It happens everywhere in community. If you were thinking, gosh, what's weird about us? Nothing's weird about you. This is what happens. Don't exactly know why, but we need to do better. So back in 1998, I ran into nonviolent communication and I thought, oh my God, this is fabulous. And more recently, there's this thing called restorative circles, which is a conflict resolution method that comes from, in the see. So these two things, I think, are wonderful tools and treasures for communities in general, certainly for co-housing. So I highly recommend them as tools in the toolbox. And this here is good project management. Is living in a community a project, do you think?
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Is it kind of an ongoing, we need to maintain it and repair it and co-create it project? Building one, building one is certainly a project that requires good management. And living in one requires ongoing management. And ongoing management is a thing that a lot of people don't know you need until they find out you need it, and then we think, oh shoot. Let's see, the flow of work tasks, what things happen when, where we allocate budget money for this or that or that or that, and when we do that. All that is so extremely important. Well, there's one thing that seems to impact all of these: governance. And governance includes a piece, decision-making. However, a lot of people in communities think decision-making is governance, but I don't think so. I think governance is about the organization of work tasks and projects, smaller projects, and the organization of information and how we can find out stuff and how transparent is it and where do we go look it up and what information flows from where to where and how do good ideas get from here to there to there to there. How can we be transparent and effective and efficient and have equivalence with each other? How can we have equivalence with each other? So there are different governance methods that communities use, or different decision-making methods, which they call governance. So what I've recently kind of come to see is that how the community does governance affects all these three things so much, because if the governance method has a decision-making method that tends to help people feel upbeat, happy, joyous, connected, filled with energy and kind of beaming, I would say that's a method that is working well with that group. If the governance is such that we know what's going on and we know what needs to be done and we know who's doing what and we feel like all bases are being covered, it tends to create a certain goodwill. So if we have a governance and decision-making method that works well, it tends to help project management succeed and thrive. So I'm going to put a little smiley face here. Hope you don't mind me being kind of silly. I'm going to keep doing it all night. And boy, when you feel that goodwill feeling, that Taoist leadership, we did it feeling, it tends to energize the goodwill, the harmony, the community glue. And when you have a governance and decision-making method that seems to benefit how we talk to each other and reduce the level of conflict, it seems like we don't need so much to be experts in things to deal with touchy situations, and we have much less need for conflict resolution. And I'm not saying this because it's my theory, though it's my theory. I'm saying this because I've just lived through it for the last 5 years at my community, Earth Haven. I've been there 10 years. We got into horrific conflicts, basically regarding our governance and decision-making, and we've just come out the other side, like the sun's coming up. And what a difference in all three things. So that's a little quick presentation that I wanted to do, and now I'd like to see what you think about that. Does this resonate with your experience? Do you want to know more? Are you thinking, what's she talking about? Love to hear from anyone.
Yeah, I'd be very eager to hear you differentiate between governance and decision-making with some case studies or examples, how that happy transition has happened in your community from all the conflict to something where it sounds like now there's a much nicer ease.
Thank you. Distinguishing between governance and decision-making, making it a little more clear with some examples, okay? And And what did we do to change it? We're in the beginning stages. Rays of sun are shining over the mountains. So anyone else had a comment?
Just like you said, we have a beautiful common house. I just want to also say that while we have so much to learn, and I'm really glad you're here, that we can also pat ourselves on the back for we've maintained this place too, and we do have that glue. I think we are a very I'm not sure the word is skilled, but we're a very successful community in a lot of ways. And so while we move forward, I think we can always remind ourselves and pat ourselves on the back about that, we are a strong community. We can actually face, changing governance or whatever. Probably better than a lot of communities because we have such good skills and success.
You do have common meals twice a week. Way better than a lot of other co-housing communities. I think we should give yourselves a round of applause. I'm impressed, and I'm hard to impress, and I've been to 125 communities in my little life, and I'm impressed. Plus, I know your reputation out there in the communities movement, which is, so I think you're absolutely right, Laura. Okay, was anyone else raising their hand?
Could I just check something that I thought I heard you say, which
Sure.
was that if you have a certain kind of governance or decision-making system, you don't need as good communication stuff?
I think the way you're saying it right now, I must have misstated it, so let me try better. Thank you. It seems to me that you need aggressively, fiercely, constant monitoring of your communication and hyper-vigilance about how you said that word or not that word, and making sure you're doing it absolutely right if you have low trust and demoralization, which you might have if the governance isn't working so well for the community at that time. And while I'd love every community to have fabulous communication skills, it seems that you need to be less hyper-vigilant and you can be a little more relaxed if the governance is just going great. Because what I've seen is that a whole lot of times there's a lot of connection between how the governance is affecting people and how the morale of the group is, and thus it affects conflict. So I guess I'd like to make a little Taoist thing here. Thank you, ancient Chinese. So here we have good communication skills, and here we have governance that works well. And I mean decision making too, so I'll do a DM. And I'd say that there's a kind of a cyclical relationship. Does that make it more clear? And I want to check with Gayatri. Have you observed anything about this kind of cycle?
Well, I would say in a way, yes. But I think, we're really talking about dynamic governance.
Well, I haven't started talking
Not
about
yet.
any particular governance method yet.
Right, but that's what my personal investment is in, and by the virtue of the procedures and the techniques and all of that, it makes for really good communication processes. So it's this is my opinion, is that there's less required of the individual, in a sense, to be, this may be, horrible to say, but I feel that the consensus model, which is decision-making, requires much more of the individual to be mature, to be a good listener, to be a good communicator, to, leave their ego at the door before a meeting, to, it just requires a lot. There's so many people around the country and even internationally teaching yet another way to do consensus, and because they found some tweak that will maybe make it better. And to my way of thinking, it's like, how many different kinds of dressing do you put on the lettuce before you decide it's maybe time to compost it and get a different batch of lettuce, anyway, so in a way, yes. Still, but I guess what I'm hearing from this is that there's such an interaction between the two. The governance process is so infiltrates how we experience each other so profoundly, even if we don't think it does, you know, that is just really important, and it very much is, it reflects an important part of our communication. You know, it's the most important part in a sense, you know, how we communicate during meetings and when we have different ideas about how things could go. Well, that's the time when we most want good communication skills, and we most need structures that bring the best out in us.
Oh, the best, yes.
You know, that bring the best out in us, rather than, you know, you can, research has shown you can take one group of people and give them a game to play where the rules of the game have people compete with each other to win. People will do great. They'll compete with each other and they'll win. You know, some of them will win, some will lose. You can take those same people and have them do a different game where the rules are about collaboration and teamwork and whatnot. And guess what? The same people will do great, and they will learn to collaborate. They will collaborate. They'll enjoy collaborating, and it's the same people, the same level of skill they came into it with. So I just think that some structures are game changers, you know, and allow people to move into just a different game, and it brings out different things in people. That's my experience.
Thank you. This reminds me of
Not that I'm
something.
passionate about it or anything.
I want to say something in a minute, but I'd love to hear from someone from here about your beliefs or views or experience about the relationship between your governance method and community well-being. Has anyone, I want to see a show of hands, has anyone noticed or suspected that there might be a relationship? Just curious. Okay, so I guess that was kind of a dumb question, wasn't it? Sorry. Would anyone like to say something about what you have observed and what you think might be so, having lived in community for a while, about that relationship? Any insights you'd like to share?
Well, it seems like how we've set things up for the last number of years is that to get anything to happen in the community, we have the steering committee that helps if someone wants something to happen. So we need this like one burning soul to try to move something through, and the steering committee tries to facilitate that. But inevitably, that person burns out, or even if it's a small group, they burn out, and then they feel like, wow, many of us have experienced trying to take a position of leadership or trying to move something forward, and you feel like you get shot down. There's a New Zealand phrase that says something like, high poppies get...
Tall poppy.
Tall poppies get...
The tall poppy syndrome, but they say it in Australia, tall poppy syndrome.
Yeah, it's like you stand up and you get mowed down.
Right,
So,
cut off that poppy, we have to be all the same size.
That has just felt like it's really hurt the energy in the community, and
Yeah.
that people are very cautious about, gee, I'd like that, but I don't have the next year of my life to devote to wanting to make it happen, and
Yeah.
thick skin to deal with people telling me all sorts of
What's
things.
wrong with you? Why did you do that wrong? I don't like that. That's not okay. Where did you get off saying that? Hey, what do you think you're doing? You trying to take power?
Have you had experience with this?
Yeah.
In living color, right in front of my eyes. I'm wondering if anyone resonates with what this lady says. If you'd raise your hand, if it sounds a little familiar, I think it might be true. Okay, thank you. And Laura, did you have a comment?
My experience with a lot of meetings is that I come in and I feel really good. We do the circle, and at the end of the meeting, it's like, I am so anxious. I want to scream from the building. Even if I like the decision, even if there was no decision to be made, and I can, sit at any task for 2 or 3 hours and not have that experience, but I have it continuous, almost at every meeting.
You know what? Me too. Excuse me, anyone else? A little tiny finger, if you don't want to admit it, just, do you ever feel like that? Anybody? Oh, yeah. Are you our sister community secretly? Were we twins separated at birth? I mean, I'm wondering here.
Or are we just human?
Well, I'm kind of joking around. I'd like to tell you a quick experience which sort of touches on the question you asked me. My community, again, not co-housing, but has all these things in common with co-housing because we have meetings, we have committees, we have a decision-making method, facilitators, agenda planners, minutes, conflict resolution. sounds pretty similar. We have a different ownership structure and a different purpose. We don't just live there, but we have jobs there and work there and create community businesses, not that the community owns, but that individuals own, and then we grow and raise food there too. So we're trying to be a little bit like a village. But co-housing and eco-villages have far more in common with each other than they don't, so please think of me not as an alien. We had one decision-making method that we used for 18 years, which is how old we are. And we had disappointment, heartbreak, demoralization, civil wars, people who wouldn't talk to each other and who are outraged, hurt feelings, mediations, refusals to do mediations, dwindling meeting attendance, the most responsible, high-energy people who would provide leadership on committees, make proposals, and help us meet our own goals. We have all these unfulfilled goals, and to help us meet those goals, those people would leave when? First. They'd be the first to withdraw from governance, the first to no longer go to business meetings for the same reasons Laura said. The first to say, I'm out of here. But they didn't really leave, they just didn't go to meetings anymore. Or they'd switch their committees to go to join the fun committees that had nothing controversial happening. So they could contribute, but like, who's going to get mad at the celebrations community? Committee, you know? Hey, I'm switching from, finance to plays and celebrations and music and song and dance. It's more fun. And then we began to have actual people leaving. And who were the first people who left?
The most competent.
Yeah. The most able, willing, and capable of providing all kinds of energy, ideas, and leadership for what we were trying to do. It's so different in an eco-village. We didn't build houses in a common house and move in. We camped out in tents and slowly built little tiny buildings that we could only live in 3 seasons, and would go off to town, and then we'd come back and add insulation, and we didn't get bank loans because no bank would loan to us. Are you kidding? Because we were one group who owned all the land, plus we were like too good for bank loans, and not that we could get them. And then we'd borrow money, and we'd build buildings 1 room at a time. Then 2 years later, in our savings account, we'd build a kitchen, because before that, we just go out to the barbecue. And we ended up slowly building a place that now looks like a village. Co-housers come out there and laugh at us. We go to co-housing communities and get in the... Nevertheless, we needed a whole lot of initiative and projects, because our goals included, let's build roads, let's build bridges, let's build footpaths, let's build a community building, let's get a community kitchen, let's get jobs on site by encouraging people to have businesses, let's get farming going, let's clear trees, and we're in landscape that looks like this. 3 converging stream valleys in the southern Appalachians. Not so easy as a place like central Massachusetts. And so we were hamstrung and, let's see, how do you pronounce that thing? Hoisted on our own petard. We were using a decision-making method that the people in the community's movement told us would create harmony and trust and goodwill, and it would make us feel bonded and connected, and it was so much better than what else was out there, which was majority rule voting. Or some leader would tell us what to do. It was better than that. So with that ringing in our ears, and that being the only song being played, what were we to do but to embrace the very thing that we knew would save us from human nature? And instead, we have people who can't bear meetings or decisions or governance. We had a governance system that consisted of a business meeting of anybody who would go, but anymore it's sort of like thinning hair, And then we have committees. Some of these people would be in the circle formerly or now, others just were in committees. And then we had fewer people in the committees. And then we had people leaving the community. Then we'd have